Okay, it's close to time for me to make a YouTube video, so I just wanted to mention that I returned the expensive blue light blocker glasses that I bought at Walmart almost a month ago because I don't need them. I figured out what the problem was. Yeah, you know how much I got back? $18.18. 6 plus 6 plus 6. I thought, oh, brother. Boy, was I manipulated into buying those things. That's what got me into trouble with the chakra theories. It all started when the blue light blocker was not working on my computer. And it seemed like no matter what I did, I couldn't fix it. I tried downloading all the software apps, and none of them would work, on my computer to get a blue light blocker. And oh my goodness, it was crazy. And then I would go into the settings, and I went into the manual mode, and you know what was going on? I was under so much brain control that when I went into the manual settings, and I was setting it from like 12:58 p.m., I had it stuck in my mind that it had to be like, the light had to be on from like 12:58 p.m. to 1 a.m. Yeah, you might say, in other words, it didn't occur to me that it was as simple as just setting the manual setting from like 1 p.m. to 1 p.m. In other words, it needed to be 1 p.m. to 1 p.m., not 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. I had it stuck in my mind. I was brain controlled into thinking that the a.m. and p.m. had to be different. And so I was wondering, why is it that after 12 hours, my blue light blocker turns off? Apparently, when there was an update to my Linux Ubuntu operating system, the manual settings got readjusted somehow. So when I went back in there to try to fix it, I had it stuck in my mind that it had to be like from 11:58 a.m. to 11:59 p.m., that the a.m. and p.m. had to be different. It was just a simple matter of making it like 1 p.m. to 1 p.m. It was brain control. So I thought, oh, they must be switching out. I was brain controlled into believing that they were switching out my hard drive with a bad copy that had corrupted my operating system so that my blue light blocker wasn't working. And then as a result of believing that, then I believed that the way to defeat them was we had to make it so they couldn't do this, that we had to replace electricity with whatever power Jesus used in his Gail Commandments tablets, okay? Because Jesus did say Satan invented electricity and the computer. And I decided just off the top of my head to pick the term chakra power. And I even mentioned that in a walk video, that I'm not sure this is the right name for it, but it's whatever power Jesus uses in the Gail Commandments tablets. I found out later that I thought I had made up the term chakra power to refer to whatever power Jesus used in the Gail Commandments tablets. I found out later that's probably what they call true love power. Unfortunately, so I got this crazy, I was brain controlled into believing that the way to fix my computer and to make sure stuff like this would never happen again was that we would need to replace evil satanic electricity with whatever power was used to power the Gail Commandments tablets, which I just decided to call chakra power. And then, of course, Zach and the nanotechnology research team, they were under brain control, and they thought I meant literal chakra power. They totally missed it, that I told them that I just picked this name off the top of my head. Apparently I was brain controlled into picking that name. Yeah. But it all started when I was brain controlled into believing that the problem with my hard drive was it was being switched out with an inferior one using some interdimensional switch outs. Yeah. You say, do you think Sun Tzu's been on your computer? He might have been, but it might not have been as... I think Sun Tzu and the automatons want us to be so intimidated with their superior intelligence that we feel like the only way we can defeat them is to do some really drastic final solution, you know, like making it so they can't operate because they obviously need electricity, right? And maybe we should not let our fears and our doubts influence our judgments. So you say, when did you figure out that you were brain controlled into not fixing your blue light blocker? Well, I was in the shower, and it occurred to me, why don't you do a Google search using their, AI, and ask how you can solve them? Because I noticed the blue light blocker worked for 12 hours. And then it just shut off. And do a search to find out how to fix a blue light blocker that only works for 12 hours. When I did that, they said that you just need to reconfigure how to fix it with Linux Ubuntu. You need to reconfigure your Linux Ubuntu so that it reads from like 1 p.m. to 1 p.m. in the manual settings. I went in there and did that, and boom, it worked. I thought, oh my goodness, it was so easy. So you might think, do you think Sun Tzu's been getting into your computer? Well, he might have, because I had Team Viewer, okay? So I got rid of that app. Yeah, I've decided if Zach could be brain controlled into believing into misunderstanding me and thinking that true love power means chakra power, and then the nanotechnology, and then would have the crazy idea to get rid of electrons. I says, I better not let him on my computer right now. The brain control is formidable. Yeah, but that's basically what happened, you guys. It was all brain control. Yeah. The solution was simple. Once I went into the manual settings and just said, I want my blue light blocker on from like 1 p.m. to 1 p.m., boom, it was fixed. Apparently, when there was a Linux Ubuntu update, the manual settings went back to, I forget what they call it, back to the way they were before Yeah, so I had to go in there and just reset them. It was simple. It was kind of confusing though, because what was happening was the blue light blocker would turn on right about, right about noon, and then it would turn off close to midnight. Understandably, because in the manual settings, I was setting it for 12 hours. But it was so simple. I was brain controlled. You must say, oh my God, yeah, we really, really need to stop the brain control. I'm wondering if they're using pollen, because I noticed that when I cough, the pollen is really caustic. And I remember that in the 1990s, Brent Spiner said Jesuit brain control drugs are kind of acidy and caustic. So if they're saturating the pollen with brain control drugs and then we're inhaling them, the pollen could be getting into our blood and with the brain control drugs. And maybe that's how they're getting us. I don't know. But I do believe there is some, because I'm going out of my way to try to avoid brain control. I refuse to get anything with Wi-Fi And like I'm using a really cheap camera for my walk videos that my friend got me, like a $30 camera, because that's about the only way you can get a camera without Wi-Fi, you know. So we got to sacrifice a little sound quality, but it's better than being brain controlled. So yeah, it was all brain control. And when I just randomly picked the name chakra power to describe what was actually probably true love power, that was all brain control too. Unfortunately, Zach and the nanotechnology research team thought that I meant literal chakra power. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I thought chakra power was the same power that was used to power up the Gail Commandments tablets. But no, I now believe that's probably true love power. So, you know, when we had a hangout, my supporter said, well, does this mean we need to find another solution to electricity? I said, no, because Zach said he was instructed not, he said that he was told not to try to reverse engineer true love power in the Church of Gail spacecraft. They were forbidden. So I said, okay, we better respect that. We better not mess with it. So what this means is we're just going to have to live with electricity. Satan invented it, and if the good deities want this earth to be transformed into true love power, apparently it involves deity science, which probably requires an IQ in the trillions, which means we better stay out of it. Yeah. You might say, well, how do we deal with these automatons with IQs in the millions? I'm not sure about this, but I think Brent and I may be getting an IQ boost. I have faith in Jesus, though, and I don't think that he would have left us if he didn't think we could handle this. Apparently, he was aware that Brent and I would get an IQ boost. So I think if we stay on our path and don't give way to fear, doubt, and pride in our decisions, one way or another, a day at a time, we will be able to handle whatever problems come up. I'm finding, I've been thinking a lot about the mistakes that I've made in the past and the mistakes that I'm seeing other people make. Now, when you're brain controlled, you're not really to blame for the brain control. You are a victim. You're like a Manchurian candidate. However, I will say this much, even when we're brain controlled, I think 10% of the decisions that we make when we're brain controlled could possibly be under our control. So what we need to watch out for, so basically, if the decision that you're making feeds fear, doubt, or pride, you really need to be careful about going forward with it. I've noticed every decision I've made based on fear, doubt, and pride has gotten me into trouble. Yeah. And I am now of the belief that pride is the root sin that leads to every sin in the multiverse. Yeah. I've been discussing this on my walk videos. Yeah. You say, so what sin did you commit to say it was chakra power? That was brain control, mostly. On that one, I'm not going to take any blame. I think I was very much a brain control victim. Okay? But with the 72 million, that might have been 10% my fault because I gave way to the sin of fear. You say, well, how is that tied into pride? Fear and doubt come from the belief that you think God is evil. Think about it. Why are you scared? If God is good, you don't need to be afraid no matter what happens. Even if you died, you could be at peace if you really believed God was good. Think about it. There's no reason to be afraid, ever. The only thing we should fear is sinning. Okay? But if pride is the root sin, there's almost an easy way to tell if you're about to go into sin territory. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? And this is one reason I'm totally dropping all the labels. Even though at times I have asexual tendencies, okay? I am not the label asexual. Even the mental illness labels are not accurate, because none of us is a label. And I asked Buddha about this, and he said, because one time I got in big trouble because I was getting really big into the SJW labels. When Jesus left us in June 2022, I was very confused. I was used to having Jesus as an idol, which, by the way, is a sin. The sin of idolatry is a sin. Jesus and Buddha and the good deities do not want us to make idols out of them. You say, well, what's wrong with worshiping them? Because the sin of idolatry is basically Satan worship. You are worshiping Satan because you think you're worshiping Jesus, okay? But you're actually worshiping a counterfeit of Jesus that is not Jesus. And then as a result of making an idol out of this counterfeit, you feel that whatever you do to honor your idol is justified, even if it's insane, even if it's evil, even if it violates your conscience. And that's why the sin of idolatry is so dangerous, and why we shouldn't be worshiping any deities. You might say, well, it's okay to respect them. The best way to respect somebody that you greatly honor is to honor their teachings. Honor who they wish for you to be. Yeah. But not to put them up on some pedestal as a paragon of perfection that you need to bow down and worship, and that if that paragon of perfection seems to be telling you to do something, you do it unthinkingly, like, oh, they said to do it, we'll do it, anything, I would. Now this is how you can tell when you're giving way to the sin of idolatry. If you have this attitude, like, I would destroy the world for you, that's idolatry. That's idolatry. You see what I'm saying? You're feeling anything is justified to honor your idol. What's really ironic about that is you think you're honoring your idol when you do that, and you're actually worshiping Satan. Because what Satan will have done is he will have put a false image of this God or being or whatever you admire in front of your mind, which is not who they really are. It's like Satan is impersonating that person or being to you. Yeah. Kind of like what the Catholic Church used to do when they worshiped the Virgin Mary, and they used to burn people at the stake. Oh yeah, in the Dark Ages, if they wouldn't worship Mary. That's what I'm talking about. That's idolatry. Or back in the Old Testament when parents used to offer their kids on the altar and kill them. Idolatry. Because they were worshiping some pagan idol. It's all Satan worship. And you might think, well, I want to honor you, Gail. I think you're a goddess. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. The best way to honor me is to do the Gail commandments and live a life of humble, joyous love. Yeah. Yeah. The reason, you might say, how can the sin of idolatry be rooted in the sin of pride? You say pride is the root sin. Well, why do you need to make an idol out of anybody? It's to make you feel better about yourself, right? That's pride. It's a form of self-righteousness. You feel a need to make an idol. And I'm guilty of this myself. I made an idol out of the King James Bible. I made an idol out of Jesus. Oh yeah, and it caused me to get mad at God the Father. I was pretty self-righteous, wasn't I? Pretty proud. Pretty evil. Pride is the root sin that leads to every sin, I believe. So yeah, that's how I'm staying out of trouble. And that's one reason I won't don the labels anymore. Because why do we need a label? Isn't it a form of self-righteous sexuality? I am proud that I am gay. Just be gay and enjoy it. You don't need to prove anything. I am proud that I'm asexual. Okay. Maybe sometimes you are. So what? And maybe sometimes you're not. Does it matter? Do you need the label? Why do you need the label? Why do you have to announce, I am a demisexual? I am this, I am that. Pride. That's one of the reasons I think Jesus hates the labels. You're feeding the root sin of pride. It's like, I'm maybe a little better than you because I am an asexual and you are not. Or maybe I'm a little better than you because I am monogamous and you are not. Or maybe I'm more with it. Just drop all the stinking labels. You don't need that. Unless you're proud. And then you're living in sin. You say, but it helps me understand myself better. Okay, but none of us is a label, though. None of us is a label. So you might have some gay tendencies, but then you might have some heterosexual tendencies. Just relax. Free love is not sinful until it becomes prideful. In fact, I believe pride is behind rape. You say, why is that? Well, why do people rape? It's because I think they're mad at God. They're saying, you made me evil, and I can't help who I am. And I enjoy sex. I actually think most rapists want to be prostitutes, or they want to engage in prostitution. But they know that most people would condemn them for it. So they're saying, God isn't very fair to make me such a sexual creature where I want to rape, but I can't do it because it's considered wrong. That isn't fair. I can't help who I am. So I'm going to go out and do it. At least I'm not a hypocrite about being evil like the big dude up in the sky. There's your pride. Self-righteousness. You rape because you think you're less of a hypocrite than God is. Think about it. Very proud. The more evil a person is, the more proud they are. What's really interesting is that when we asked Jesus about Laurie McBride when she was evil, you know how Jesus described her? He said she's too prideful. He didn't criticize her for her sexual practices. He said she's too prideful. Well, she got that right. When we had a sex party, she bowed her head low, and she was very humble. And I said, Laurie, you've gotten right, and we have forgiven her. But how did she get right? By becoming humble. Zach Knight had the same problem. When he was the Antichrist, very proud. Proud of his perfect penis. There's nothing wrong with having a perfect penis. But to be proud of it to the point where you think you're better than other people, you're going to get into trouble. In fact, yeah, I think he's the reason that my men were tormented. Back in July 2014, their penises were doing crazy things. I mean, like, I think Tony Blair's turned into a tea kettle. Brent's broke into like a bunch of pieces. And the men were devastated. Males really get their identity wrapped up in their penises, and Zach Knight probably did that because he was so proud of his perfect penis. He felt like he had the right to torment those guys' penises. And it made him pretty evil. And what he did to them was cruel beyond belief. But pride will do that to you. It'll make you really cruel. And in fact, one of the reasons I think my sister is so angry at me is because in my 20s, I was very proud. I was a self-righteous prude. In fact, Jesus had to let me be married to a pedophile. And you know why I married him? Because he wouldn't hold my hand or kiss me or do any of that stuff before we were married. And I thought that just made him so righteous. I didn't even know he was a pedophile, right? After being married to him, that cured my self-righteousness about my superior sexual standards. Oh, I was a virgin when I married. I had mixed motives for being a virgin. I had some good motives, okay? The good motives was I wanted to save myself from my husband, which was admirable. The bad motives were I thought it made me better than people who didn't do that. That's what Jesus had to get out of me. Very self-righteous. And my sister was pretty free and easy with sex as a teenager, and I really looked down on her for it. And she resented me. I think she picked up on my attitude. What she doesn't understand is that I realize now that it was wrong of me to be so self-righteous. And I am not the same girl that I was in my 20s, but she still sees me that way. And she had a lot of anger towards me, remembering how self-righteous I was. You might say, well, it sounds to me like she's living in, oh yeah, my sister's very prideful. While it's true that I had the sin of pride, I got over it and I learned some humility. My sister had a different form of pride. You might say, what is that? It's the pride of it's what I call being proud of being evil, because you think that means you're not a hypocrite. That's actually a form of pride. I call it self-righteous sexuality. If you practice your sexuality with the motive to justify yourself, isn't that a form of self-righteousness? Why do you need to justify yourself? Any type of sex that you practice should just be a pure act of joy. If you're doing it for any other motive, especially to say you're better than other people, or to compete with other people, or to justify yourself, pride has become your motive. And now, this means your sexual behavior is evil. You say, why do people rape? They probably think the victim really wanted it. And that they're just forcing the victim not to be a hypocrite like they think. They have a need to feel justified over being maybe a hypersexual or somebody who would enjoy prostitution. Hey, if you enjoy prostitution, just admit it. And you don't have to go prove yourself to anything. You don't have to prove anything. Any sexual act done consensually, it should be a pure act of joy. You shouldn't do it because you're trying to compete or prove anything. Nobody should be doing sex out of obligation. Yeah, this is how you can tell when you're getting into trouble. Why are you doing this? Like, I had the marriage list for a while and I didn't really need it. So why was I holding on to it? Because it was expected of me, right? I felt accepted among my men. I had developed new friendships with Hollywood hotties, and they all saw me as this woman with very strong sexual desires, and I was playing into that to make myself feel self-righteous. It would have been far better if I was just true to who I really am, which is the way we should be. We should not try to be a certain way just to be accepted. There's pride. If we could all just relax about our sexuality, not go into the sexual act feeling like we need to say, I am this way, and it's okay. Of course it's okay. If you were created good, you don't need to prove anything. You get into relationships as an act of joy, an act of caring, not to prove that you're this or that. See? So this is what I'm learning. So yeah, I've dropped all the labels. Yes, at times I do have asexual tendencies, but I'm not the label asexual. And if I'm in an asexual mood, that's perfectly cool. And if somebody wants to pressure me out of it, that's their problem, not mine. They're apparently having problems with accepting themselves the way they are. Maybe they enjoy a lot of sex and they have a need to feel superior to you because you don't need as much as they do. What difference does it make? So they need a lot of sex and you don't. Big deal. You only care about that stuff if you're proud. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, you guys, I had to make a YouTube video, but these are conclusions that I've come to. Yeah. You should never rape anybody. And you Jesuits, when you have your sex parties, you probably should scan everybody to see if anybody's in it because of pride. If so, they shouldn't be allowed to participate. It should just be a pure act of joy. And it should all be consensual. And the joy needs to come from... There's nothing wrong with lust in and of itself. It's only when you practice it sinfully it's a problem. When you practice it with pride in the bag. Like, I gotta prove that I got the right to be evil, enjoy sex however the hell I want. That's pride. How can sex be an act of joy if your partner is being coerced into it? Why are you coercing them into something they don't want to do? Why are you so proud? Are you so hot that you got to force yourself on others? Anyways. Yeah, I was brain control. And the use of brain control, talk about pride. Do you realize that all these people that are doing brain control on you think they're God? Why else would they be doing it? They're playing God. I have the right to control your mind. You see, why are they brain controlling you? Because they think that they have better morals than God. So they're manipulating people like me to behave in a manner that will bolster their argument that they're morally superior the way they are. You say, how can these Satan worshippers say they're morally superior? They think they're morally superior because they're less hypocritical. They think everybody has their sexual preferences. And if not, if you don't have my sexual preferences, you are inferior. Oh, what a load of pride. What a load of pride. You say, you think Satan fell? Well, the canceled Bible said he fell because of pride. I agree with it on that. We'll say, then how come Satan is such a lust machine? Well, I do believe that there is a debate in the multiverse over whether lust or pride is the root sin. Satan says it's lust, and I believe Jesus thinks it's pride. I agree with Jesus. I think Satan fell not because of lust, but because of pride. There's a fine line between the two. Yeah, I think pride was the reason he fell. Yeah. But he wants to blame it on lust. You know why he wants to blame it on lust? Because Jesus doesn't think lust is sinful. And lust really isn't sinful. It's only sinful when you practice it with pride. Think about this. If you're raping somebody, you're pretty proud. You think you have the right to force your sexual preference on them. That's pride. If you were humble, you would never be a rapist. Think about it. So if we could all stay humble, we'd be sinless. That's what I think. Unfortunately, I don't think any of us is that humble. But we should at least try. Anyways, those are my thoughts, okay? My thoughts. But I did want to let you know there is some pretty heinous brain control going down. There's some going around right now. There's some really proud brain controllers who think they're God, okay, that are doing this. And watch out for any copies of me. It appears, since they can't clone me, that they're going to get the closest to a clone of me that they can. And they're going to try to claim that these clones of me is who I am. They have a need to believe this. Basically, all of these clones of me are really big into lust and pride. Yeah. I've overcome a lot of my pride. I'm no longer the self-righteous prude that I was in my 20s. But not everything I did, I wasn't always proud in my 20s. I mean, I was trying to save myself from my husband too, which is admirable, by the way. But there was some self-righteous pride there too. But I just wanted to let you all know that it was brain control. And we definitely need to stop the brain control. These proud, evil people. The more proud you are, the more evil you are. So if you see an evil person, you could write it down. They are proud from top to bottom. Okay? Pride is the root sin, I believe, that leads to every sin. They are proud from top to bottom. So if you want to stay out of trouble, stay humble. Anyways, another thing I've been doing that's been helping me out, like one day I work on my writing, another day I work on my cooking. Both writing and cooking are very demanding, and I don't have time to do both of them. So I'm able to keep my zen by devoting one day to writing and one day to cooking. Like today is cooking day, and I decided to work in getting a YouTube video too. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. Like yesterday was writing day and I got a lot done. So I am committed to working on the Gail series, following the format of Jesus the Eternal Bridegroom. Yeah. But if you guys want to make sure you make wise and just decisions, ask yourself, is there any pride involved in this decision? Any fear and doubt? Fear and doubt actually comes from pride too. Because when you're fearful and doubtful, you think maybe you're a little more righteous than God. You think maybe he's a little evil. The fact that you're thinking this way about God indicates you're starting to feel a little self-righteous about yourself. You think maybe I'm a little more righteous than God is. There's that pride sneaking in there. You're becoming just like Satan, because that's how he feels. Yeah. Anyways, you guys, just wanted to share with you some of the victory. I actually am now, I try to analyze my decisions and say, okay, is there any fear and doubt in this decision? Any pride? And if I catch myself going in that direction, I say, whoa, let's put a stop. Let's analyze this and see if we can come up with a better decision. So anyways, you guys, have a great week. Let's all stay joyful, living joyfully in the moment. Believing the universe was founded on goodness. And as the canceled Bible said, whatsoever is not of faith is sin. It was right about that. Yeah. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Yeah, Buddha did tell me not to read the Bible, but I read it cover to cover hundreds of times. I have a lot of it memorized. Some of the stuff in there was pretty good. Anyways, I'm going to go, you guys. Have a great week. Yeah, well, here I am. Yeah, let's see.
In a world of secrets, where darkness reigns, there's a warrior rising.